Oh, you were looking for a different kind of Cuban. Hi, Misha here, and we've been doing a lot of FALs from DS Arms, so let's do another one. Their so-called SA-58 Cuban model, or quote, the Cuban. We'll talk about 3 or 4 things that make it a little different, and give my impressions, pros and cons, because there's a couple of each. Go over the specs, and see if this is something worth doing. As always, if you could, please do like, share, and subscribe. Like to help us out, check out Patreon, and check out my personal channel for kind of the cabin project, as that's wrapping up. And as I mentioned in a few videos, probably going to go on a video slowdown or vacation for August as we finish doing the range out of the cabin. But had a few guns like this wanted to talk about first and foremost. So with no further ado, let's just dive into it. So like I said, this is pretty much a standard 50 OO. 7.62 NATO, 21-inch barrel, yada yada. First, a little context. The Cuban model. Interesting variation. They were all made in Belgium, and they were all kind of late 50s style guns. And they originally were ordered by Batista around 1958. Now, for his personal guard, he actually was ordering AR-10s from Sam Cummings, Armalite. Hence the Cuban model AR-10. But it seems like for the general infantry, the FAL was the target. And it looks like maybe a handful did make it over right before the revolution kicked in by 59. Either way, Fidel and his cadre ended up with some of the Cuban ordered versions. In addition, they had actually acquired some from Venezuela. Originally, Venezuela had ordered FALs in 1954. Well, some of those were given to the Cuban revolutionaries, including Fidel himself. There's a very famous story about getting it from the plane pilot, although it's a little muddled as to who exactly ordered that done. Either way, it doesn't matter. FALs, Cuban, and they liked them. And for a brief time, the relationship between FN, Belgium, and Cuba continued, with at least another order of 10,000 placed in 59, and looks to be one more delivery, although the second major delivery in 1961 exploded. It was sabotaged, and so that was kind of the end of it. That's when the situation with the West was really, really deteriorating. The only number I could really find for roughly how many FALs made it to Cuba either before or after, around 35,000, give or take. And a lot of sources kind of make it seem like not many made it, but then you realize that Cuban FALs appear so many places. They were actually very front line during the Bay of Pigs era, or early 60s, but as relations grew closer with the communist bloc, the Second World, the Warsaw Pact, you'd see more and more of those guns in Cuba, including the Czech VZ-52 rifle, even the VZ-58, and the Kalashnikov AKM itself, amongst others. So as that became more and more common, along with their cartridges, the 7.62 NATO FAL was kind of retired back to second line use in the late 60s, and by the 70s, Cuba started giving these away, along with some older VZ-52s, to places with commies, to put it, like Chile, El Salvador, Nicaragua ended up with some. You even see some making their ways all the way to Africa. And that's kind of why the Cuban FAL isn't forgotten today. It's kind of a famous model. I should also mention that the very famous G series, the 1800 some odd semi-autos, quote unquote, they were actually originally select fire guns converted in the UK by Parker Hale. They were actually, at least some of them, supposed to be originally from that Cuban contract that wasn't delivered, because by 1960, the U.S. and allies put pressure on FN to, hey, don't send guns to Fidel. So they had some that were manufactured but not shipped out yet, and they were turned into semi-autos and sold here, also in Canada, because they were still cool back then, and it did that. So even though it's just one of many contracts, 90 nations use the FAL, it just pops up in weird ways, which kind of explains why DS Arms wanted to do a Cuban. So with that, let's talk about the features that make this a Cuban, what they got right, and what they got wrong. Alright, so this is on a basic Type 1 receiver, takes standard metric magazines, 21-inch barrel as I mentioned, standard adjustable gas system, short stroke gas piston, carry handle, standard FAL bolt, and release control. I'm just gonna ease it so it doesn't, well, yeah, slam. I didn't want to slam her. And standard selector. Of course, this is safe and semi, although it does have a dummy third position, but it can't rotate there. Okay, so where we begin? Let's start with the muzzle. We have an interesting muzzle device. This is the so-called Browning long flash hider, also known as the Type B, also known as the T48. Notice it has a key on top. That's how they time these. And if you're familiar with the British L1A1 or Australian or the Canadian C1, you'll notice it's very similar, but down here. It's because they're all kind of based the same. That's really cool that they're doing this. And they even have the proper bayonet lug. But it's not the bayonet we all know and love. This is the one you're probably familiar with the FAL. Simple, effective, kind of cool in its own way. This is the Type C lug. It fits the combo device that a majority of FALs have. This is the Type A, with that really cool kind of reciprocal thing. Hard to do when it's not on a gun, guys, but yeah, that recoil thing. And you don't see many guns that take this in America today, but it was the common deal in the mid to late 50s. It was just made for those kind of bare barrels with the lug underneath. But between A and C, of course, is B. And I don't actually have a Type B to show you right now, but I do have one coming, believe it or not. What it basically was, this with these prongs removed. And that's because these were meant to act as a three-prong flash hider. But this has a flash hider. So Type Bs are very rare in America. So kudos to DSA for actually giving a working lug. Another positive, wood buttstock. All the Cubans came with wood hardware. This is a Type C with the bracket, which would be correct for 58, 59 time period. 60 maybe. It does have the 360-degree rotating swivel, which a lot did. Now your Israelis would not, but they're different. It does have a non-trapdoor butt plate, steel. And all that. And finally, the markings down here. If you look, it does have the Cuban triangle marking and the proper SRA selector markings. Again, even though the A is just there for cosmetics and you cannot move the selector there. Yeah. And it has a hollow pistol grip without the notch for a cleaning kit, which would be correct for this era. They didn't start doing that till a little bit later on. All that is correct, including having it on a Type 1 receiver. Now, yes, the Cubans also had a crest here on the receiver, although it was often sanitized, so not on this one. And that kind of gets us into the, well, less accurate features of this replica. Correct barrel, sort of. Now, this is a chrome line bore and chamber. good for shooters, but actually the Cubans were not chrome lined. So internal 1 in 10 twist, these would have had more of a 1 in 11. But what's definitely not correct is the bipod cut. These were not on the Cubans. Likewise, while the Cubans mostly had wood handguards, you definitely see plenty with the early polymers. Probably they were replacements because the early woods were infamous for breaking. I would be okay with that, but having bipod cut handguards is just off on a Cuban. Now, to be fair, DS Arms knows this. This is what they have. Do they want to do non-bipod cut polymer handguards? Absolutely. But molds are expensive, yo, so take it for what it is. Likewise, this is kind of a later style carry handle. Although this would have had probably polymer by that point, along with the polymer charging handle, you probably want something more like what you would see on an STG 58 or G1 for that. Of course, that's very easy to change out. At least it does have the carry handle cut in the receiver. We really get into like small details, like this is a standard straight trigger guard. Early ones were scalloped. There's a few different styles. Also, I'm not 100% sure if they were large foot bolt releases. They might have been, but I'm not entirely sure. And this buttstock, well, actually seems it's nice hardwood walnut. It's a modern reproduction out of Turkey. It's not an original stock. You might have guessed. But at least it's not Israeli length. And looking at the receiver, it's correct, well-cut Type 1. But even though it's 4140 steel, it is cast. I know. People are already, yeah, I get it. But DS Arms does still make forged, it just adds money. And as I always have to remind folks, I know you know, but some might not, the FN imports from the late 70s onward were on cast receivers too. Casting is fine if done quality, and DS Arms does seem to add some quality there. So it doesn't really bother me much. So basically, the barrel, the receiver, kind of your standard DS Arms. The handguards are what they are. So your major differences are the stock, the markings on the lower, and I think the coolest thing is the Type B or T48 flash hider. Kind of getting back to the positives, it is a nice smooth action, perfectly good trigger for an FAL. It is correct to have the short sights. That was becoming very much the standard after the G1 and STG 58. Standard gas regulator. And one thing I'm happy to report, they did give it the vertical takedown lever. Horizontal, even though it's arguably a better lever, just would not look right. So within reason, within cost, I think they really did do what they could. Top cover seems correct. Again, they were pretty much standard Belgian guns for the most part. And something that people have been asking about for years, magazines. This is what it came with. Standard metric 20 round mag, steel, not those polymer ones. But here's the best feature. DS Arms. Yes, they are back to making metric mags. And the price point's not too shabby. Under 40 bucks brand new, sometimes 30 on sale. Compared to those plastic ones they had to ship with for a couple of years, this is great. I will say it fits this gun a little tight, but it's because everything's new and with a new finish. But, you know, they can wear in. The finish on this is kind of nice. It's a mix of paint and phosphate. I really do like the finish, and that would be correct for this era of gun. So, would I want to keep one of these, and if so, would I change anything on it? To be honest with you, I am tempted. I don't have a single gun in the collection with this Type B muzzle device. and it is really interesting. Now, one thing I should point out, originally these were 9 by 16, 24 threads, right hand. Later on, they would switch to 9 by 16, 24 left hand. This is why the L1A1 still has the right hand threads, and originally these did. From what I know, this is a left hand threaded, so you could put a combo device on. And it reminds me of some of the early FN imports that came in. They had this on, but a lot of times they would replace it with a combo device because they had trouble with these banana-ing, splitting and flaring. I would be interested to see if that would happen to this one, surely with modern metallurgy, but who knows. But, you know, doing this for more of the cool factor. The barrel, I'm going to be honest, I could live with. Chrome lines inside, fine. Being bipod cut is annoying, but what I might do is move the sling swivel back here, have it in the right position, because you can. They're interchangeable. So I'd probably move the sling swivel back and just live with it, because it's a replica. The buttstock is fine. I really like it. In fact, it's one of the best features of it, and it gives it a nice balance point. It's cool that it's got the marking down here. If I kept it, I wouldn't try to put a Cuban crest here unless someone knew how to do it, but I would probably drill it out and just leave a sanitized hole there. Easiest way to do. Be kind of neat, I think, personally. But the big deal, the handguards. Yeah, something's got to be done about that. All right, a little bit of gunsmithing there. What do you think? Now these are actually US made, I believe, and they look like they probably came off a L1A1. However, they're not bipod cut. And went ahead and moved the sling swivel. It's easy enough to do. Same screwdriver even. You can make this as tight or as loose as you want. That's about where I kind of like them. And then of course you have the correct flash hider. And I will be getting a Type B bayonet in from a friend. So I'm pretty tempted. This is kind of my notion here. This wood and polymer look, I've always appreciated. Kind of an M1 or M2 look from Bell. We both think it looks a little better this way, but what do you think? A little more Cubano, if you could just say the wood handguard broke in service and got replaced with a M-Bell or whatever. That's the thing, these got cycled around so much that you could pretty much put whatever parts you wanted on them and say, it's fine. But, as I was doing this, I just found out something today. Not only does DS Arms have wood stocks, they actually have wood handguards coming in. Now, of course, not original FN. They're made by the same subcontractor in Turkey that makes the stocks. They have a set of wood handguards coming in. That's the ticket, guys. Matching wood handguards on this, even if they're modern production, I believe would really make this pop and kind of be what I'm looking for. I could even put a wood carry handle on, but again, I think by this point they were using the early polymer. They definitely would have the early polymer pistol grip. The only wood pistol grips you see on FALs are very early, like 54, 55. Not counting, Australian and British and Canadian L1 types. But even this way, it just feels better. And if I do this, the only kind of inaccuracy that's immediately apparent is the bipod cut up here. I think I can live with it. We'll see. But I think I can. And while my FAL collection's pretty good when it comes to the newer stuff, I don't have a lot of 50s, early 60s era looking guns. And that's kind of where I'm at on this. I think it might be a keeper, especially if we do get the wood handguards in. What do you think? Of course, the only problem there is what sling to put on it. So that's my thoughts, guys. Cool history, and I think this could add to the collection. And it would get me back to an even number of FALs. You might have noticed I'm a little OCD, but I think it would round things out. I thought the South African R1 would kind of be it, and it's still there. Don't worry, it's not going anywhere. Of course, the way things are this year with the cabin project, anything I might want to keep on myself means I'm going to have to sell something, but I'll find an AR or an AK to sell. I love AKs, and I really like ARs. But FALs were kind of my first love when it comes to self-loading military-style rifles. I just really, really enjoy it. And they're very end-user serviceable. They're just a lot of fun, very pleasurable to work on in your garage on a Saturday. And as I've said in previous videos, I'm just super happy DSA is kind of back to the classics. This is what they need to be doing. They can do the tacticals. They should. But they used to have a kind of a corner of their website with replica collector guns, G1, T48, Rhodesian. And they're bringing it back, and I couldn't be happier. And based on customer feedback, yeah, a lot of people feel the same. Doggy. Hello, doggy. So that's my thoughts. What are yours? As I've been saying in recent videos, we are finishing the cabin, about to start the range project. So if you'd like to kind of get in there and help sponsor a target, go check out Patreon, the range builder tier, and you can kind of vote on what we shoot at. And as I promised in another video, you do that, I will ring steel. You'll get to have a blind guy ringing steel frequently on here. How about that deal? If you can't, I understand completely. Money is tight for everyone this year, and it probably won't get any better anytime soon. So just liking, sharing, subscribing, that helps a lot too. You can do that, costs you nothing, and makes me really happy. And if my videos also either make you happy or at least entertain you for a bit, consider doing that. Much obliged. But told you I was on vacation. Leave me alone.